My name is Nettie Williams, and I'm 68 years old. I still remember that cold Christmas morning standing at my son's doorstep with arms full of carefully wrapped presents. Andrew looked me straight in the eyes as he locked the door and said those words, "I'll never forget. You are no longer family." Behind him, I caught a glimpse of Melissa, my daughter in law, smirking with satisfaction. I simply nodded, turned around, and got back in my car. Then I made one phone call. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to follow my journey of standing up for myself. I raised my son Andrew alone after my husband John passed away from a sudden heart attack when our boy was just 10 years old. Those early years were incredibly difficult. I worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, as an administrative assistant during the day and waitressing at night. My sister Gloria would watch Andrew when I worked late shifts. Despite the exhaustion, I always made sure to be there for his baseball games and school events. Those precious moments kept me going through the hardest times. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood. I wanted Andrew to have the best education possible, so I scrimped and saved every extra penny toward his college fund. Some nights after Andrew went to bed, I'd sit at our small kitchen table balancing our budget moving pennies from my own needs to his future. Andrew was such a bright, kind-hearted boy. He excelled in school, especially in mathematics and science. His teachers always told me he had a promising future ahead. When he won a partial scholarship to State University, I burst into tears of joy. Even with the scholarship, I still needed to cover half his tuition plus living expenses. I took out a second mortgage on the small house I'd finally been able to purchase when Andrew was 16. Our relationship was always close. Andrew would call me every Sunday without fail during his college years. He'd tell me about his classes, his friends, and eventually about this girl he'd met in his economics class named Melissa. She was ambitious and driven, studying business administration. Andrew was completely smitten. The first time I met Melissa at a parents' weekend event, I noticed something off about her. While she was polite on the surface, there was a coldness in her eyes when she looked at me. When Andrew stepped away to greet a professor, Melissa commented on my simple dress, saying it was cute, in a tone that felt anything but complimentary. I brushed it off, wanting to give her the benefit of the doubt. Over the next year, I tried my best to build a relationship with the young woman who had captured my son's heart. I invited her to join our traditional Sunday calls. I sent her thoughtful birthday and Christmas gifts. When they visited during breaks, I prepared Melissa's favorite meals after Andrew mentioned she loved Italian food. Despite my efforts, there was always a wall between us that I couldn't break through. 3 years ago, Andrew and Melissa got married in a lavish ceremony that Melissa's parents mostly paid for. I contributed what I could, though Melissa made it clear my offerings were inadequate compared to her family's. Still, watching Andrew beaming with happiness as he said his vows made every sacrifice worthwhile. Yet even on that joyful day, I noticed how Andrew seemed to be drifting away from me. When I asked for a mother-son dance, Melissa interrupted, saying they needed to greet important guests instead. The changes in Andrew became more apparent after the wedding. Our Sunday calls dwindled to twice a month, then once a month, and eventually became irregular. When I called him, he always seemed to be in a rush. "Sorry, Mom, we're just heading out," or "Can I call you back later?" That later rarely came. Whenever I suggested visiting them in their new apartment, Melissa always had an excuse. They were renovating, they had plans with her family, they were too busy with work. When I did manage to visit, Melissa would make a point of checking her watch repeatedly, making it clear my presence was an inconvenience. Then came the family gatherings where I gradually became an afterthought. For Thanksgiving, the year after their wedding, I received an invitation just 3 days before, almost as if I was a last-minute addition. When I arrived, I discovered everyone else had known about the gathering for weeks. I sat at the far end of the table, away from Andrew, while Melissa's family occupied the places of honor. When Andrew and Melissa decided to buy their first home, I wanted to help. I had saved nearly $50,000 over the years for my retirement. It wasn't a fortune, but it was security for my later years. Without hesitation, I transferred the entire amount to Andrew for their down payment. "Mom, this means the world to us," Andrew had said, giving me a tight hug. Melissa stood beside him, her eyes gleaming as she looked at the bank transfer confirmation. A month later, they moved into their beautiful new home in an upscale neighborhood. I waited for an invitation to their housewarming party. It never came. I only discovered they had held one when I saw photos on social media, pictures showing Melissa's family and friends celebrating in the house my savings had helped purchase. When I asked Andrew about it, he seemed embarrassed. "Oh, it was just a small gathering that Melissa put together last minute," he explained. But the elaborate decorations and catered food in the photos told a different story. The situation worsened when I learned that Melissa had been speaking ill of me to other family members. My niece Jessica called me one evening concerned. "Aunt Nettie, I don't know if I should tell you this, but Melissa was saying some awful things about you at the barbecue last weekend." Apparently, Melissa had been painting me as an overbearing mother who couldn't let go of her son, claiming I was trying to control Andrew's life and their marriage. These lies hurt deeply, especially because I had always been careful to give them space. I never dropped by unannounced. I didn't call excessively. I had done everything possible to respect their boundaries while still trying to maintain a relationship with my only child. The following spring, Andrew and Melissa announced they were expecting a baby. I was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a grandmother. During one of our increasingly rare phone conversations, I offered to help prepare the nursery or assist Melissa after the baby came. "That won't be necessary," Andrew replied stiffly. "Melissa's mother will be staying with us for the first month." When my granddaughter Lily was born, I rushed to the hospital with gifts and flowers, only to be told by a nurse that the family had requested no visitors. I sat in the hospital parking lot for hours, hoping for just a glimpse of my first grandchild. Finally, Andrew came out to my car. "Mom, we're really tired. Can you come back another time?" That another time turned into 2 weeks later after Melissa's entire family had already met and held the baby. For Lily's first birthday, I spent weeks finding the perfect gift, a beautiful handcrafted rocking horse that cost nearly a month of my Social Security check. I waited for an invitation to her party. It never came. Once again, I discovered the celebration had occurred when photos appeared online. There was Lily, surrounded by Melissa's family opening presents and smearing cake on her face. My granddaughter's first birthday, and I wasn't even invited. Andrew stopped answering my calls altogether around this time. When I did manage to reach him, he seemed distant and uncomfortable. I later learned from Gloria, who had maintained contact with some of Andrew's old friends, that Melissa had been telling people I suffered from mental health issues. "She's implying you're unstable, Nettie," Gloria said gently, "that you're not a safe person to have around Lily." Last summer, I took a bad fall in my garden and ended up hospitalized with a broken hip. I asked the nurse to call Andrew. He came once, staying for barely 15 minutes. He looked around nervously the entire time, checking his phone repeatedly. "Melissa's waiting in the car with Lily," he explained. He didn't return for my 5-day stay, not even when I underwent surgery. After my recovery, I made one last attempt to see my granddaughter. I called Andrew and asked if I could visit on a Saturday afternoon. To my surprise, he agreed, though he sounded hesitant. When I arrived, Melissa answered the door and informed me that Andrew had been called into work unexpectedly. "Lily is napping," she said, blocking the entrance. "And honestly, Nettie, I don't think it's good for her to spend time with you. Your influence isn't what we want for our daughter." I was stunned into silence. Before I could respond, she added, "Andrew agrees with me on this," and closed the door. I later discovered from my old neighbor Ruth, who had moved to Andrew's neighborhood, that Melissa had been telling neighbors I had substance abuse problems and couldn't be trusted around children. The cruelty of these lies was almost unbearable. I had never touched drugs in my life and rarely drank more than an occasional glass of wine at Christmas. This Christmas was going to be different. I decided to make one final attempt to repair the relationship with my son and his family. I spent weeks preparing traditional family recipes: John's famous turkey stuffing my mother's cranberry sauce and Andrew's favorite apple pie. I carefully selected gifts for everyone: a collector's watch for Andrew that had belonged to his father, a designer scarf for Melissa, and a beautiful dollhouse for Lily that I had saved up for months to afford. The weather forecast predicted snow, but I was determined to make the 2-hour drive to their home. I packed everything into my aging sedan and set out early, wanting to arrive before their Christmas dinner. The snow began falling halfway there, getting heavier as I approached their neighborhood. By the time I pulled up to their large 2-story house, my windshield wipers were struggling to keep up with the blizzard. From my car, I could see their home was full of light and activity. Christmas music drifted out along with the sound of laughter and conversation. Through the large front windows, I glimpsed a crowd of people. Melissa's parents, her brother and his wife, and several others I didn't recognize. A magnificent Christmas tree sparkled in the corner of their living room, surrounded by piles of presents. I gathered my bags of food and gifts, carefully navigating the slippery walkway to their front door. My heart pounded as I rang the doorbell. The sounds inside diminished. I rang again. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the door opened just wide enough for Andrew to step partially outside, blocking my view of the gathering inside. "Mom," he said, his voice flat. "What are you doing here?" "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I brought some food and presents for everyone." I lifted the bag slightly, my arms already aching from the weight. Andrew didn't move to take them or invite me in. His face was a mask I couldn't read. "You shouldn't have come. We didn't invite you." "I know, but it's Christmas and I wanted to see my family, to see Lily." My voice cracked slightly on my granddaughter's name. "That's just it, Mom," Andrew said, his voice hardening. "You are no longer family. We've moved on. You need to accept that and stop trying to force yourself into our lives." I felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. Behind Andrew, I could see Melissa now watching our exchange with an unmistakable smile of satisfaction playing at her lips. "Andrew," I whispered, "what have I done to deserve this? Please, can we talk about whatever is wrong? There's nothing to discuss. This is what's best for my family, for my wife and daughter." He began to close the door. "Don't come back, Mom. We don't want you here." As the door closed in my face, I caught one last glimpse of Melissa, turning to their guests, likely ready to spin some tale about the unstable mother-in-law who had shown up uninvited. I stood there in the falling snow, clutching bags of food that were growing cold and presents that would never be opened. The finality of Andrew's words echoed in my mind. "You are no longer family." On the drive home, my phone pinged with a bank alert. Curious, I pulled over at a rest stop to check it. What I saw sent a wave of shock through me. My savings account, which should have contained my modest emergency fund, showed a balance of just $83. I quickly logged into my account to discover multiple withdrawals over the past year, all transferred to Andrew. He had been emptying my account systematically. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My son hadn't just rejected me emotionally. He had been stealing from me. The money I had given for their house hadn't been enough. Somehow he had gained access to my accounts and had been draining what little security I had left. In that moment, the full truth became clear. My son and his wife hadn't just pushed me away because of some personal dislike or family drama. They had been using me, taking everything they could get, and now that I had nothing left to give, they had discarded me completely. I sat in my car at that rest stop for nearly an hour, watching the snowfall and letting the tears come. But as the initial shock subsided, something else began to rise within me, a determination I hadn't felt in years. I had spent my life being kind, generous, and understanding. I had given everything to my son, including my financial security. And this was how he repaid me. No more. I was done being a doormat. I was done being exploited by the very person I had sacrificed everything for. With hands that trembled slightly, I picked up my phone and made a call to someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Patricia Wilson, my old friend from high school who had become a successful attorney. She had helped me draft my will years ago and had always told me to call if I needed anything. "Patricia, it's Nettie Williams. I'm sorry to bother you on Christmas, but I need your help." Patricia listened quietly as I explained everything: the money for the house, the unauthorized withdrawals from my account, the years of isolation and lies, and finally, being turned away on Christmas Day. "Nettie, I've been worried about you," Patricia said when I finished. "I thought something wasn't right when Andrew came to have you sign those papers last year. You know, the ones you said were for his mortgage refinance." I was confused. "What papers?" There was a pause. "Oh, Nettie, I'm so sorry. Those weren't mortgage papers. Those were documents transferring ownership of your house to Andrew's name. But the good news is, there were irregularities in how they were notarized. If you didn't understand what you were signing, we can challenge it. And as for the bank withdrawals, if you didn't authorize them, that's straightforward theft." My mind reeled. My house, too. The small home I had worked so hard to pay off was now, supposedly, Andrew's. Patricia continued, her voice taking on the professional tone I recognized from our legal discussions. Here's what we're going to do. I already have the documentation prepared. I suspected something like this might happen after our last conversation. We can file for an emergency injunction to freeze any further transfers and begin the process to reclaim what was taken fraudulently. After hanging up with Patricia, I made a second call to my friend Tom Jenkins, who worked at the county tax assessor's office. We'd served on the library board together for years. Tom, I hate to ask, but could you check something for me? Did my son Andrew and his wife Melissa report the $50,000 I gave them for their house as a gift on their taxes? Tom called me back 20 minutes later. Nettie, there's no record of any gift tax filing. If they didn't report it and you didn't file a gift tax return, they could be in serious trouble with the IRS. My third call was to Margaret at First National Bank, where I'd been a customer for 40 years. She was horrified to hear what had happened. Nettie, I'm putting a freeze on your accounts right now. We'll need to file fraud reports for the unauthorized withdrawals. And I'm checking. Yes, Andrew is still listed as a joint account holder on your main account. We'll remove that immediately. My final call was to my sister Gloria. To my surprise, she answered immediately despite it being Christmas Day. Gloria, are you at Andrew's house? I asked suddenly, realizing she might be part of the gathering I'd seen. Yes, Nettie, I am. Melissa invited me last week. I've been trying to call you all day to find out why you weren't here. I was there, Gloria. Andrew turned me away at the door. He said I wasn't family anymore. The gasp on the other end of the line was audible. What? That can't be right. Melissa told everyone you declined the invitation because you were spending Christmas with friends from your church. Gloria, there was no invitation, and there's more. I proceeded to tell her everything, the financial exploitation, the lies about my mental health and substance abuse, all of it. Those lying, scheming... Gloria didn't finish the sentence. Nettie, stay on the line. I'm putting you on speaker right now in the middle of this living room. What happened next unfolded like a scene from a movie. Through the phone, I could hear Gloria's voice suddenly loud and commanding, cutting through the background noise of the Christmas gathering. Everyone, may I have your attention, please? I have my sister Nettie on the phone right now. The sister who Melissa claimed didn't want to join us today. The truth is, Nettie drove 2 hours through a snowstorm to be here, and Andrew turned her away at the door, telling her she wasn't family anymore. I heard gasps and murmurs. Then Gloria continued, her voice shaking with anger. And that's not all. For years, Melissa has been telling all of you that Nettie is mentally unstable and has substance abuse problems. Those are vicious lies. My sister has never had either issue. She's been a dedicated mother who worked multiple jobs to put Andrew through college. She gave them $50,000 for their house down payment. And how did they repay her? By systematically draining her savings account and trying to steal her home. In the background, I could hear Melissa's voice rising in protest. That's not true, Andrew. Tell them she's lying. But Gloria wasn't finished. I have proof. Nettie's attorney and bank have already confirmed the unauthorized withdrawals. And Andrew, the IRS, is going to be very interested in that unreported $50,000 gift. The phone seemed to tumble, and I heard confused voices and movement. Then, a clear voice I recognized as Melissa's father. We're leaving. I won't be party to this kind of behavior. Melissa, I raised you better than this. Within minutes, Andrew's phone was ringing my number. I let it go to voicemail. Then his text messages started pouring in. Mom, there's been a huge misunderstanding. Please call me back. We need to talk. This is all a mistake. I can explain everything. Meanwhile, Patricia texted me that the emergency injunction had been filed. Margaret from the bank confirmed my accounts were secured and the fraud investigation had begun. Tom, from the tax office, had already submitted an inquiry to the IRS regarding the unreported gift. Within hours, Andrew and Melissa's perfect Christmas had unraveled completely. According to Gloria, who called me back later, every guest had left their home in disgust. Melissa's own parents had taken Lily with them, saying they needed time to reconsider some things. Andrew's calls became increasingly desperate. The first voicemail was angry. How could you humiliate us like this after everything we've done for you? By the third call, his tone had changed completely. Mom, please, we're going to lose everything. The bank called about our mortgage. They're reviewing our loan because of potential fraud. Please, Mom, I'm begging you. I didn't respond to any of his messages. Instead, I spoke with Patricia about pressing criminal charges for the theft. "It's your call, Nettie," she advised. "But sometimes the threat of charges is leverage enough to get full restitution." Over the next few weeks, the consequences continued to unfold. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings on Andrew and Melissa's house due to the fraudulent loan application. The IRS opened an investigation into their finances. Family members who had been manipulated by Melissa's lies reached out to me one by one, apologizing for believing the worst about me. Most surprisingly, Melissa's parents contacted me directly. "Mrs. Williams, we had no idea what our daughter was doing," her father said soberly. "We're horrified and deeply ashamed. We're currently helping them with legal fees on the condition that they make full restitution to you." As winter turned to spring, I heard from Gloria that Andrew and Melissa had separated. The financial strain and public exposure of their actions had fractured their relationship. Melissa had moved back in with her parents, taking Lily with her. The months following that fateful Christmas were both painful and healing. Initially, I felt hollow inside. Despite everything Andrew had done, he was still my son, and the complete severing of our relationship left a wound I wasn't sure would ever heal. I began attending a support group for parents estranged from their adult children. There, I found understanding from others who had experienced similar betrayals. One woman in particular, Judith, became a close friend. "The hardest part," she told me during our coffee meetings, "is accepting that the child you raised with love can choose to reject that love so completely." With Patricia's expert legal help, I recovered most of my stolen savings. The process of reclaiming my financial independence became unexpectedly empowering. I learned to scrutinize financial documents carefully, set up proper security measures for my accounts, and even started a small investment portfolio with Patricia's guidance. I discovered new interests that had nothing to do with being a mother or grandmother. I joined a community garden, volunteered at the local library, and took a watercolor painting class. Each new activity helped fill the void left by Andrew's absence and reminded me that my identity extended far beyond my role as his mother. 8 months after Christmas, Andrew appeared at my door. He looked thinner with dark circles under his eyes and new lines on his face. "Mom," he said simply, his voice cracking. "Can we talk?" I invited him in but maintained my emotional boundaries. He told me that his marriage to Melissa had ended. They were divorcing. He had lost his job due to the stress and distraction of the legal proceedings. He was living in a small apartment and working at a job far below his qualifications. "I destroyed everything good in my life," he admitted, tears running down his face. "I let Melissa convince me that you were trying to control us, that you were the problem. Then I convinced myself that taking your money was justified because you would have wanted me to have it anyway. I became someone I don't recognize, someone who could turn his mother away on Christmas Day. I'll spend the rest of my life regretting that moment." His apology seemed genuine, but I had learned the hard way about trusting too easily. "I appreciate you saying these things, Andrew," I told him carefully. "But rebuilding trust takes time. I can't just forget what happened." We established a cautious new relationship. I agreed to occasional phone calls and monthly visits, but I made it clear that my financial information was permanently off limits. When Andrew asked if he could bring Lily to see me during his visitation weekends, I agreed with one condition: he would need to correct all the lies that had been told about me both to Lily and to anyone else who had been misled. The journey of healing continues daily. Some days are easier than others. The betrayal left scars that still ache when memories surface unexpectedly. Yet I've found a strange kind of gratitude for the experience. It taught me about my own strength and resilience. It showed me who truly deserves my trust and generosity. Most importantly, it taught me that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. Today, I work part-time as a mentor for other parents navigating difficult relationships with adult children. I share my story as a reminder that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, to reclaim your dignity, and to rebuild your life on your own terms. Looking back at that snowy Christmas day when I made that pivotal phone call from my car, I realize it wasn't just about getting justice or revenge. It was about finally loving myself enough to say enough. No one has the right to abuse your love or generosity, not even your child. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with loved ones? What helped you find the strength to stand up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and self-discovery. Remember, it's never too late to reclaim your power and your peace. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to honor your own worth in all your relationships.